So there was a prescription bottle, medication bottle, at Gene Hackman's bedside. Yes, that's a fact now, right? It is the main target of the investigation of the tragic end of legendary actor Bill Gene Hackman in New Mexico at his New Mexico home. That's the main focus of the investigation, the law enforcement investigation, and the previous, reports, of law enforcement agency are saying that there was a prescription medication and that, well, they are not really 100% sure exactly what happened, but of course, it's been a couple of days. It's been already 48 hours after this tragic event in the state of New Mexico, in which the actor Gene Hackman was, of course, living with his wife, with his younger wife, of like a 30 years gap. That Oriental, lady who was his last wife, basically, and his dog. This dog ended up dead also in that home. So of course, there are many, many people are, asking the questions, right? They're asking the proper question: what really happened that day in Gene Hackman's passing? So in this video, I'm gonna answer a few of those questions, and why am I answering the question with knowledge of situations in that 95 years old of somebody with that age, right, living with his wife and a dog, and a setting where this happens, and the setting in which this is developing. I did work 3 years at a nursing home, and I spoke with many people, other people who work at different nursing homes. I visited myself other nursing homes too, but I was not just a visit. I worked 3 years 3 years full time working in an American nursing home, and I know from inside out, from outside in, every day, every minute of it, what exactly is going on at a nursing home, and why this subject of a nursing home at Gene Hackman's death. Why I'm bringing it up? Because precisely the focus of this investigation of Gene Hackman's death is a prescription bottle, a medication, a prescription bottle by his bedside. So the first question to be answered is, what was a prescription bottle medication doing at his bedside? He's 95 years old. And when you ask the question about, in 3 years, I never, not even once, I never saw a prescription bottle medication at any resident, because it's not allowed. It's not allowed. Not even if the person, the elderly resident at a nursing home is 80 years old or 85 years old or 90 years old or 95 years old. Simple, zero prescription bottle at any resident of a nursing home's bedside or a drawer or at all, because prescription medication is given away by the nurses, by a licensed practical nurse, LPNs, RNs, registered nurse, somebody who is certified. Not even nurse's aide. I did my work as a nurse's helper, as a nurse's aide. Of course, I knew that I couldn't give IV injections or giving prescription any medication to a nurse. That could be my that's penalized, of course. So if somebody's been caught doing that you do something that you are not allowed to do at any medical setting. Of course, a nursing home is also a medical setting. It's a medical setting, not just a nursing home where people live. It's a medical facility, 24/7 medical facility. So the question about what was a prescription medication doing at a bedside, that's how basically you answer the question. And many things can happen. That's what I'm going to explain. What can happen? What can happen with a prescription medication pills, you know, at the at somebody who's 95 years old, of course. Uh, that we there are number of things can happen. One of the first thing is that accidentally, you know, I'm not saying this is what happened with with Gene Hackman, but accidentally a person, a 95-year-old or 90-year-old or 85-year-old accidentally could take more pills, more, or if it's a liquid medication, right? If he's been self-medicated, if he's taking his medication on his own, he could accidentally take more than what is allowed, right? But let's say that his wife was present, and his wife was supervising his health situation. Most likely, that he is a very famous Hollywood actor. Of course, he had most likely, I mean, good assets. Good. He had his own doctors, his own nurse, probably most likely. A visiting nurse. There's a program called visiting nurses. A nurse you can hire a nurse that can come to your home and twice a week or three times a week to supervise what's going on with you, to take your your blood pressure, your heart, your what's the condition of your eating, your dieting, and of course most likely the nurse is reporting to his boss, to her boss in this case. If it's a female nurse, it could be a male nurse that is reporting to the agency about what is the condition. And a visiting nurse is just doing a follow-up of what's going on with the patient. A patient who independently live at his own home or her home. It could be a female or male, of course. In this case, we know for a fact that Gene Hackman was living with his wife and the dog. All ended up dead in a suspicious way that that is still under investigation. But there's a fact of life. There should never be, even with his wife present, even his wife at his bedside, or even if they sleep in a different room or they sleep, go to bed in different beds, whatever the case of the situation might be. At a nursing home setting, there should never be, and never will be, because it's against the rules to have a prescription medication bottle or any kind of medication, even over the counter. There's no such things as over the counter medication in a nursing home setting, of course. So, if there was one, prescription bottle medication at his bedside, of course it was under supervision of his wife, a visiting nurse. Who knows? I mean, there's so much speculation going on about what really took place there, of course. But that's the first fact that we need to establish. That's the first thing we need to establish. That once we answer those questions, now the second issue is, why was he not at 95 years of age at a nursing home? I knew, working 3 years at a nursing home, there were some couples. At a time, people go in nursing home. Those who pass away, of course, leaving an empty bed. The next resident, the next client, I don't want to say customer, but it's a client. It's a patient, of course. New people always come. Of course, there was a floor with married couples too, in which both are elderly, in their 80s. I remember many cases in which both elderly couples, right? Of course, typically was in different bed, as I can recall, as I established as a fact after working 3 years. There was never a married couple sleeping in the same bed. Usually was in the same room, but in different beds. Now, it's something that I want to say for a fact that used to be there. Was part of my work when a resident, resident who was a couple at 75, at 80 years old, 85, who wanted to have a private time. Of course, we had to. Part of my work was to allow to close the curtain and have the resident have a private moment of intimacy, you know, at any by request. So they had to request that private moment. They really, because of course, unless they were, if they weren't able to, it's like asking permission. Asking permission. It sounds bad. It sounds like crazy. How can you have a? Do you have to ask permission to a worker? I was the worker then. I was the employee of those. Ask a permission to have a private moment with your spouse. But that was the rule, and that is still the rule. That's this is nursing home are supervised states by the state. There's a state commission that supervises nursing home, and there are rules to follow. So it wasn't just a rule for one specific nursing home. It was a rule that generally, was followed by nursing home all across, the state of where I was working. So, a moment. I'm talking about, of course, what was like to have a couple. Just in this case of Gene Hackman and his wife, the question is why weren't they living at a nursing home? Was it because of not being comfortable at a nursing home? But a 95 years old person, of course, if he's been taking well care, right, proper care at home, is very much, 100 times more, I'm using numbers here, 100 times more to live at home, of course, independently, to live more, comfortably, than have, being at a nursing home, of course. But in the case of a couple being at a nursing home, if they were of course, they could have, the issue here of being a couple like Gene Hackman and his wife being at a nursing home, they could have still have a normal life, and normal life meaning a regular life, but with the care of proper medical care and supervision of that particular issue of having a prescription bottle by his bedside. Of course, they shouldn't be, they will never be at a nursing home. So could this tragic death could have been prevented? He was in good health. He was, yes. And there was no lack of intimacy. Even like I said before, there shouldn't be a lack of intimacy if they were to have intimate life. Even at 95 years old, who in the world says that a 95-year-old doesn't have, intimacy, meaning be it, have a sexual relationship with his wife? Who says that? Who established that? Abraham, right, had from the Bible, his wife Sarah. Abraham was 99 years old. 99 years old. His wife Sarah was 88, and they had a child, Isaac, right? So who says now? Who in the right mind can say, a doctor? Hello? A doctor can say that with so many ways to have right now, so many ways meaning so many medication, even medication that helps an elderly person have a sexual, an active sexual relationship with his wife. Why not, right? Who says that they couldn't have that intimate moment at a nursing home, right? If they were living at a nursing home. And of course, if he was under prescription medication, well, that could have been supervised, could have been supervised by staff members at the nursing home, right? Okay, so why not, right? That's one of the main first issues that comes up at a nursing home setting, where you have 3 meals a day, of course, and of course there are different kinds of nursing home. Some lower level, middle class nursing home, and upper class nursing home. There's no question about it. Even at nursing home setting, there are some that are luxury middle class nursing home. You pay more. at a regular level, at least a minimum level nursing home, paying 40,000 to $50,000 a year, a year to live in a nursing home. Of course, that is some of these are absorbed by Medicare, with the medical system of the federal system of the United States, of course. But some of them could cost $80,000, $70,000, and above, depending on how wealthy the resident is. So how wealthy, that's how it is. I mean, the amenities are endless. I mean, so many amenities inside the nursing home. You have, of course, there is no bar, of course, but you have, recreation. You have all kinds of, like exercise. There is a gym. There are therapists, and the more you pay, the more services you get. But something there is that you can really pay. You can't pay the disease of loneliness. So most nursing home residents are very lonely. There's a big disease in it's an epidemic disease of nature. 99.9% of residents in nursing home live very lonely. And I'm going to talk a little more about that, but focusing really right now on this tragic end of Gene Hackman. Of course, there were, like I said before, there were, floors. Half of the floor sometimes is, or entire floor of residence with designed for couples, right? Designed for couples. These couples, of course, mostly in the almost the same age, with no age gap, like in this case, right? But even with age gap, which is not the issue, of course, in this case, it's not the issue by having an age gap. But look, if this marriage was for love, right, a legitimate marriage, which it showed that it is. I'm not doubting that was a legit. This marriage was legit, right? Of course, one of the two is very much, he was a celebrity. I mean, a legendary movie actor in Hollywood, right? And of course, the wife, I'm not trying to denigrate anything, but the wife was younger, there's a legitimate love. Thousands and thousands of expats in the Philippines, in Latin America, in many other countries, in Africa, they find love with a younger woman, 20 years younger, 30 years younger, even 48 years younger. Just remember the Mark Thornton's, the famous YouTuber, who just passed away in the Philippines from a heart attack. He just passed away. He had a heart condition. In his he was like 72, early 70s, 72 years old. He was very, comparing to Gene Hackman, who was 95. Of course, I'm not making a comparison, but he had plenty of life. Mark Thornton also had plenty of life ahead of him. So, at the end of the day, it's about making decisions of what and who can making decisions where you're gonna live. And the focus of the investigation is still that prescription pill bottle medication by his bedside. Of course, could that have been prevented? Yes, it could have been. Yes, if in a nursing home setting, of course, that could have been prevented, because there never is a prescription bottle at a nursing home facility, at the disposal of a resident, of course. Yes, it's all because it's a big, it could be a big lawsuit. I mean, something happened accidentally, or it could happen, from the desire of the resident too, desire to take more pill than is allowed, which is that's not an accident. Look, with the loneliness epidemic going on in nursing home, I'm talking about 99.9% of residents, and who knows? I mean, just by the expression of their face, some nursing home wealthy, some nursing home residents telling the story. I had to listen to hundreds of stories, who knows, thousands of stories. I can even, I could read several books about what were the stories from different people, from different walks of life, from different ethnic groups, different ethnicities, mostly of course white, couples. I mean, the majority of majority of United States population is still white, right? So mostly, of course, residents from different backgrounds, people with big families, people with smaller families, different ethnic groups from different cultures. We had residents who were Orientals, Latino, African Americans, white. I mean, different ethnic, which is not the this that's not the issue in this case, and or any other case. But the loneliness disease, not the epidemic disease, 99.9%. And there's no doctor in this world, no doctor. The best scientists, they don't have a prescription yet for for that disease, for the loneliness disease. Now, if you're an expat in Latin America or the Philippines, Southeast Asia, Thailand, Vietnam, South Korea, of course there's a different culture, by culture and tradition. This is culture and tradition. People who are elderly, most elderly people, 90, that's, now we go to the opposite side of the issue here. 99.9% of elderly people in Latin America meaning south of the border of the US, right? Going all the way from Mexico to Argentina, all the way in Southeast Asia, right? In Thailand, Vietnam, Philippines. The tradition, the culture of the people are mostly conservative, right? In the Philippines and Latin America, most conservative people. And the issue of the conservative has nothing to do with it, but it's the tradition of, of people in Latin America and to have their elder parents at home, whether they are wealthy or not. Of course, there could be an elderly person in their 70s or 80s who has no relative. All the relatives die, or they can't really afford to have. They can't. The only reason an elderly person in Latin America, Philippines, ended up at a nursing home, which is a different setting. Nursing home are taking, people who take care of nursing homes in Latin America and Philippines are non-government. It's not a business, like it's not an industry like in the U.S. and Western countries. They are taking, the churches are the one taking care of nursing home. So when they receive somebody at a nursing home, is because nobody can take care of that person, that resident, that person. He was left on the street to sleep on the street for economic decision. But that's 0.01% of the population ended up like that, like ended up on the street because of poverty and other issues, medical issues. So the churches is the one to pick this person up, this elderly person, taken to a nursing home by mercy, by God's mercy, to save this person from death, from early death. So this is one of the main situation that is, main issues for elderly people, elderly population, which is the baby boomers. Over 70 million people are facing, of course, are over the age of 70. People living longer nowadays. So as you live longer, what about Clint Eastwood? He's 94 and with many plans for the next 10, 15, 20 years now, right? And you can name so many other celebrities, and not just celebrities, other people who in their 90s, in their 80s. And of course, some people choose to go to a nursing home. They make their own decision to go to a nursing home because of the proper medical care. But the loneliness is amazing. I mean, even people with big families, and some people say, well, because typical American families, the couple and 2.5 children, I'm sorry, sometimes with huge, in my case, having, I remember my grandma used to live in a rural, she passed away like over 20 years ago. But I remember the setting of my own grandmother from my mother's side, which had a big, huge family, thousands of relatives. Right? At the end of her life, she was close to 90 years old when she passed away. She was living with one of my uncles at home. But in the family setting, there are so many relatives living nearby, right? In a rural area, a small village of like 700 people, I would say, which half of this village was relative people, more than half, as I recall, still is, and it still is. Half of the population of the village, 700 people, were related to my grandma. So they will check it. They will check on her Not just my uncle who lived at home, but my aunt. She just lived nearby, a couple blocks away. Just a couple blocks away. The other one, I mean, so many relatives living in the same community, same village. Of course, that's a unique setting, of course. And they would check on my grandma almost every day, right? And my uncle was living at home, and there was somebody helping out with the kitchen help, of course, who was a relative also, who was a relative helping out at home. So my grandma never had to live in a nursing home. She was almost close to 90 when she passed away. So, of course, in Latin America, that's the tradition, right? Grandma or grandpa always stayed at home, even out of his last breath of life, being cared by relatives, and be loved. That's the most important thing that an elderly person needs, is love, not medication, not therapists, doctors, and all kinds of of course the amenities helps, of course. I mean, being active a little bit, but it's the love of relatives. That's the best prescription for an elderly person like Gene Hackman at 95 years old. Love. I'm not saying here that he didn't have the love of his wife. All I'm saying is that what about the other, his children from previous, marriages? What about his brothers or sisters if they live, cousin, relatives, niece, nephews? Was he being cared, or was he had the love of his relatives, other relatives? I'm not saying he didn't have it, but he was living in New Mexico. If he had niece or relatives living in Florida or other state, they may come once every 6 months. That's a different setting, like in rural or Latin America, Philippines. The lifestyle of the Philippines in Asia is like where the compound, all the relatives live nearby, just half a block away, the other house. I mean, or a big house where relatives are, the nephew, the children are taking care of the elderly. That's the tradition. You never, in Latin America, it's crazy. It's a scandal to dump an elderly parent at a nursing home. It's a big scandal in the community. It's a shame for the family to take a person, my mother or my father, or my father passed away already 4 years ago. But taking a relative to a nursing home, that's a shame for the person doing that. But in the U.S., it's an industry. Guys. It's money. At the end of the day, the whole issue comes to money, which is, in a way, it's sad, but that's the way reality is. And when reality hits hard, so for anybody, I'm not saying this is the reason you should be going to the Philippines or to going to Latin America, but as if you're planning to be an expert, if you're early in your 70s, in your 60s, even in your age, people move, to a different country in their 80s, making decisions about, with your family, or if you're alone, why not find a caretaker who can take care of you in a foreign land. If in your case, you cannot be in your own country. So guys, thanks for watching, and if you like this content, please subscribe, and see you in the next video. And just a moment of reflection in this issue, delicate case. Thanks a lot. Thanks for watching again. Bye bye. Take care.